I'm Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads.
And we are actually together for the first time making a video. This is our third annual Lindy School's Shawn on the Giller Longlist, and this time we are actually together at my parents' farm in Saskatchewan. How lovely to be together so far. Things could go south after lunch, but so we're here to talk about the Longlist, which just dropped yesterday morning.
That is right. So I was scrambling to take notes when the announcement came because from 8:30 in the morning onwards, I had travel-related things to do to get here to Saskatchewan. So I had time to think about these books that are on the list, and I had made a video previously about the books that I wanted to see on that list. If I was the boss, these were the books, 12 books that I would have chosen. And this Giller list actually has 14. So I could have had 2 more picks if I would have only known.
Great. And what are your overall impressions of the list? How would you characterize the long list this year?
Well, I'd say exciting. About half of them are kind of experimental type writing, and I like that in a book, personally as a reader. So I'm excited about that. There's a lot of dark humor, another thing that I enjoy. There's a few that are very tender, personal, character-based stories, kinds of things that you like.
Yes.
3 of them are by Indigenous authors,
yes,
which is also great. I noticed that several of them are about art as well, which is a hook for me. I like reading about art. So, in brief, until I read more of them, that's what I've got to say.
Okay, very good. And which are the ones that you really wanted to see on the list that did make it onto the list?
That did make it on?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are 2 only.
Oh, 2. Okay.
Yeah. And one is Tsuring Yangsam Lama's We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies.
Yes.
3 generations of Tibetan refugees.
And I didn't realize she was a Canadian writer, so that's interesting.
Yeah, she lives in Canada. And she grew up, she said, according to an author interview that I read, as an activist for Tibetan rights. And this comes through really strongly in the novel as well. Yeah.
Great. And this was written in English?
Yes. Yes, it is. And it's mostly set in Nepal, but there is also Toronto setting.
Set in Nepal or Tibet?
Nepal. Refugee camp. Long-term refugee camp.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's such longing. These people want to return to Tibet and can't. Yeah.
Wow.
And then the other one that I read that I chose for my own Giller list is Connor Kerr's Avenue of Champions.
Yes.
And so this is one of the Indigenous authors, and it is a interconnected short stories. And set in Edmonton in a particular neighborhood called Alberta Avenue. Again, there's multiple generations, although there is a main character that's in almost all of the stories. So we follow the through line of this young man from childhood into adulthood. And his grandmother, she is just great. She learned as a child helping her grandmother how to make moonshine. But in present day, current times, there wasn't so much call for moonshine. So she learns how to do edibles with marijuana and makes money that way. Yeah. It's a really, I found it really touching, and I could relate to a lot in it.
And it sounds like there was some humor in it.
Yes, there's humor. And a very serious issue. His grandmother was part of the Pappas Chase band, which their territory or their reserve was actually South Edmonton. And then they were tricked out of it.
Yeah. Just devious crap that
Yeah.
colonialist settler Canadians pulled to steal the land that they actually had reserved for the Indigenous peoples, and then they stole it back.
Yeah, and so issues like that come through in these stories, but it's very much storytelling. Yeah.
I forgot to ask you about the novel with the Tibetan theme. So are either of these first two debut novels?
I believe they both are. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, this was a short story collection, the Connor Kerr. Okay, because I think there's quite a few debuts we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and so 3 of the other books that are on the official list, I did read, but didn't choose them. And 2 of them, I was like thinking maybe.
Yeah.
So I very much approve.
Okay.
That they're on this list. So one of them is by another Indigenous author, and that's Brian Thomas Isaac.
Yes, I've read that too.
All the Quiet Places.
Yes.
Yeah, so what did you think of it?
Well, I thought it was a character-driven novel that kind of went off the rails because it tried a little bit too hard and a little bit less competently to be a plot-driven story. So the plot points didn't work and were kind of a little bit botched, but I loved the characters in it.
Yeah.
And I loved the writing.
Yeah, and the setting is very strong.
The setting,
yes. So this one is set in the Okanagan in British Columbia. And that really comes through.
And that is a debut by an Indigenous writer who is not young.
Yeah.
Maybe 60 or something, maybe even older, but it's a debut novel. I would read anything the man writes. I loved so many things about it. Didn't quite work as a novel in total.
Right. So I guess it depends what you're looking for as a reader.
Yeah.
Right.
Does my critique resonate with yours?
Well, I know what you mean about the plot, that there was a bit of awkwardness, like maybe first novel bumpiness.
Bumpy is a good word.
Yeah.
But there was so much that was so deeply beautiful about it as well.
Yeah, because that was one that I was thinking, maybe this one, maybe this one. Yeah, so I'm happy to see it there.
I am too.
And then the other one that I thought maybe was Kim Fu's collection of short stories, Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century.
It's quite a
totally up my alley because these are speculative fiction short stories with strange things in them, like a teenage girl. It seems like part of her puberty is that she's growing wings on her feet, on her ankles. There's lots of unusual technology related things too. So it's very much 21st century, the monster aspect of it. So this is one that I would put into the experimental box.
And who is Kim Fu?
Oh, she is a author that I read everything that she writes.
So this is not a debut.
No. So I think she's most well known for Today I Am a Boy. And I did really like that novel, although I prefer to read about trans people from trans authors. Just a slight quibble, I guess, there. And I really liked The Lost Girls of Camp Forevermore, because that one is told from multiple perspectives, and it's almost like each perspective could stand alone as a short story, but then altogether it also makes something bigger, as a novel. Yeah.
She has just fabulous titles. Look at her poetry. Have you read her poetry collection? How Festive the Ambulance.
I have not read that.
For Today I Am a Boy, The Lost Girls of Camp Forevermore, and Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century.
Yeah.
Great titles.
Yeah. No, she's a writer that's got some sparkle to her.
Do you know where she's...
I think she currently lives in Seattle.
Okay, but she's a Canadian, by birth or by nationality? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I must investigate further.
And then there's a third book that I have read, but that I didn't, I was surprised to see it on this list, and that's a collection of stories by Rawi Hodge called Stray Dogs.
Yes.
Now, I did admire the writing, and I found that I was more intellectually engaged, and I want to have a little bit more emotion.
Sure.
So that's why I hadn't considered it as a possibility for my own list. But the characters in his stories are like eccentric intellectuals or sad clowns. They're people who are out of step with the rest of society. So there's something kind of, I don't know, pathetic or peculiar.
Outcast.
Yeah. And the word absurd came to me, I remember, when I was reading that. So if you're in the mood for that
Absurdist Canadian fiction from a lesbian, from a Lebanese Canadian.
Lebanese Canadian. Yeah, actually there's another Lebanese Canadian on the list. I have not read Dimitri Nasrallah's anything by him before. This is not his first book, but there's one called Hotline on there.
Yeah.
And I know about the story because I've reviewed, like sort of previewed many of these books, trying to decide out of the 36 eligible books that I've read. And it turns out that only 5 of them are the ones that made the list. But anyway, that's the way it goes. So Hotline is about a Lebanese woman who immigrates to Montreal, and she's a French teacher, but the people there don't trust that she knows how to teach French. Yeah, so I guess it's what happens with her. It's an immigrant story, and I'm looking forward to reading it.
Okay, we've kind of moved into the ones that you haven't read. So tell me about in the order of your choice.
Okay, so 2 of these are ones that I already knew that I wanted to read, but they're not out yet.
Okay.
So, my name was, I had a pre-order. I still have a pre-order at the bookstore for Billy Ray Belcourt's new novel. It's his first novel. He's written poetry. He's written a memoir. Yes. So this one is called A Minor Chorus.
It's coming out, I think, next week or something.
Yep. The 13th is supposed to be out. So looking forward to that. And from the description, it sounds very experimental. And again, right up my alley. His first book of poetry, I think it's called This Wound is a World. I fell in love with it so hard. I just really, really loved it. And I think it won the Griffin Poetry Award too. And I think it might be Jordan Tannehill who said he thinks Billy Ray Belcourt is gonna, in the future, win a Nobel Prize for literature. So, with kind of that in the back of my mind and, my enjoyment of his writing, thinking, Billy Ray Belcourt, I wouldn't be surprised if that's on the Giller list. And sure enough, it's there.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I have not read This Wound is a World, but I did read Indian Coping Mechanisms, and I thought it was a little bit overly academic for my tastes. And the only other thing I've read by him was an essay that I read to you out of an anthology of Native American essays. With a very skanky title, and we both loved it.
Yes.
Something about lube or something. But anyway, it was like a five line title. And I've seen him on Zoom events. I've got a little bit of a crush on him. Hi, Billy. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I want to follow everything he puts out. So I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, and so the other one is Suzette Mayer, not out till September 27th.
And
the
she's
book
the
is
one
called The Sleeping Car Porter. And she's another author that I read everything that she writes.
Isn't she in Calgary?
Yeah.
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 You gave me one of her books. I haven't read yet.
She's a lesbian. She's black. And she tends to include the supernatural in her books. Not enough, I think, that it would turn you off.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I've been having
It's
better
just
luck
like
with
little
that.
twists in there. So this one is historical fiction. And I think there might be something ghostly, but I'm not sure.
And Sleeping Car Porter. So I'm just going to take a wild guess that that's about the black train porters in Canada, right?
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Which is...
Even if it wasn't on this list, I would definitely be reading it. Like I said, I already had my name on the pre-order list at the bookstore. So, yeah, very excited about that. And let's see, what else? Sheila Heti. I have it right here because I brought it to Saskatchewan with me because I had it to read, but I set it aside because I thought, no, it's probably not going to make the Giller list, so I'll read the other books first and then I will, it'll be like a treat to get to it. And there it is. So to say I'm really, really happy.
So you haven't read this? No,
I read the first chapter. And I knew immediately this is my kind of book. It is so weird.
No comment from Shawn, the book maniac.
It's kind of out there, but yeah.
Well, she's not for me, I don't think. I had How Should a Person Be on my shelf, and the more I heard about it, I just got rid of it without even trying it. And Motherhood didn't sound like anything I wanted to read.
Motherhood. Oh, I couldn't believe how much I loved Motherhood. Yeah, so really looking forward to this one too. And it's about art, or even more, art, love, and death.
Art, love, and death.
Everything.
What else is there, really?
Yes.
And she's a Toronto-based writer, isn't she?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Well, she's written 10 books. So she's written a whole bunch that I don't know about. Have you read more than the ones that we've
just motherhood so far.
She's older than I would have thought then. She might be as old as us.
Yeah, maybe.
If she's written 10 books, she better not be younger than us and have 10 books to their name. That's just not wrong. That's just something wrong.
Yeah, now I haven't really looked at the age of these authors. That's not something that I usually think about.
But just the 10 books has got me curious.
So one author that was totally off my radar, I had not heard about her or any of her books, and that is Noor Naga. And the title on this list is If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English.
Yes, I was aware of this book just because of the title, and I don't know how I found out about it, but once I heard the title and saw the cover, I never forgot it, but didn't know the author was Canadian.
Yeah, well, it's Grey Wolf Press, so an American publisher.
Yeah.
And Grey Wolf also published The Trees, that Percival Everett book.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, no, they've got great titles in their catalog. So as far as I know, this is about a woman who's Egyptian by ethnicity who travels to Egypt to teach English.
Oh.
And so that's that sense of, where is home? Where do I belong? That always intrigues me.
Sure, and then the language element. If an Egyptian cannot speak English, so what does that... Yeah, well, maybe that's her students.
Yeah, and the little bit that I know about this novel is that it's the aftermath of the Arab Spring.
Yeah. So. Which was, unfortunately, had so much misogyny built into it. Yeah.
So we shall see.
Yeah.
And a really small press, I think, is Black Moss Press. I don't remember hearing about them before. It's a Canadian press. The title on this list is by Andre Narbonne, and it's called Lucien and Olivia.
Yeah, never.
And it's
heard
really short, like 110 pages
Okay.
or something.
Shorty September.
Shorty September. I'm there for it. I love short books.
Yep.
I like short stories. I like short books. Yeah. It's described as being different. So that's enough for me too. Something I think maybe satirical. I'm not sure.
You're gonna put the covers up. So what is your first reaction to that cover? I don't mean do you like it, although I'm curious about that, but what is it?
It's a hook from a ship.
Oh, okay.
Some kind of equipment, either a grappling hook or something that you would hook the anchor onto.
So the subliminal message is that you will get hooked on this book, or you may have to, maybe things in this book you might have to grapple with.
Well, I think a sailor is one of the characters. Yeah. And being at sea, maybe. Because it's about human relationships. Yeah.
Quebec author?
I do not know.
Andre Narbonne.
Narbonne, it's a French name,
Yeah.
but I have no idea.
Let's check that. A marine engineer by first trade. So he is not from Quebec anyway, is my guess, because it says he was living out of his duffel bag when he arrived in Halifax on a damaged tanker in the mid-80s, and then completed 2 degrees in Canada. So this could be this could be autofiction.
Yeah, maybe.
Huh.
I'm intrigued.
Yes.
Definitely intrigued. There's another Andre on the list. Andre Forget, and his book is called In the City of Pigs.
That just sounds rude.
And so that one, the publisher is Rare Machines, and they're known for innovative, unusual fiction.
The name of the publisher is Rare Machines.
Yeah.
Wow. They should be into innovative stuff with a name like that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And
we'll see. We'll
okay.
see.
And do we know anything more about it?
No.
Do you want to look it up or just keep going?
Let's just keep going.
Okay. Yep.
So Antoine Wilson, Mouth to Mouth.
This is the only one I've read.
You've read it? Oh, good.
I read it and reviewed it, but I had no idea the author was from Canada.
Well, that's interesting because somebody commented on my channel, Karen from Roving Reader, and she said she loved it and
Yeah, I
didn't
did
know he
too.
was Canadian.
No, same here. I loved it. He must have, I think he's lived a lot of his life in the States. Canadian-American novelist, born in Montreal, but later lived in Central California, and Saudi Arabia. Yes, I would be so curious to hear what you think. This is one of those a novella that has such a tightly constricted, a tightly woven plot that is about a conversation between 2 acquaintances who hadn't seen each other since university days, and they're now in their 30s or 40s, and they both have a layover in the Los Angeles airport, and the one guy tells the other guy a story, and that's the novel. So there's a lot of conventions of the 19th century novel, and it's done so intricately, and it's such a page turner. It's a totally plot-driven novel, and I absolutely loved it.
It's coming back to me. I remember hearing you talk about
Yeah.
it on your channel. So, yeah.
I'm
happy.
Dying for you to read it.
That's good. So what does that leave? We haven't talked about Fawn Parker. So her novel on here is called What We Both Know. It's not a debut.
You ever heard of Fawn Parker?
And I remember when I looked at the description of this book, it said something like, for readers who enjoyed my dark Vanessa. And that immediately turned me off. But since this is on the list, I looked into it further and it's about a woman who's writing a memoir, ghostwriting a memoir for her father, who was a famous writer. And she can either reveal some very unpleasant truths about him or keep the facade up that he had.
So the title is really intriguing, What We Both Know.
What We Both Know.
Will we
Yeah.
keep it a secret or not?
Yeah. So that premise is enough to grab me. You know, if I wouldn't have been turned off immediately by the My Dark Vanessa.
I think those comparisons are usually just, they mislead people.
Yeah.
Because it's so facile to say, oh, if you like this, then it'd be like this. Whereas, maybe it's completely different.
It can be helpful.
It can be, but it can also be the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've got all of them that made the list.
Yes. Before we move on to the ones that you are crying about not being on the list, and if it's a two-part answer, that's fine. Who do you want to win, or who do you think, who do you think will win out of the?
Oh, it's hard for me to guess when I've only read 5 of them. And I like to base my decision on more information. I'm the kind of person who's always trying to get more information before I make a decision or judgment. However, Billy Ray Belcourt, somehow, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see, yeah.
We'll see.
I'm going to say that I think, I'm just being, my usual flippantly stupid self, but I'm going to say it's either going to be We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies or Avenue of Champions. Let's see.
Cool. It seems like often, especially with a list like this where half are really experimental, a lot is going to depend on the judge's personal taste. And that if there's likely to be strong feelings, I'm guessing, about different types of books. And so the one that ends up coming up the winner is going to be one that's more in the middle. And We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies just very well might be that one. Yeah.
Great. So which ones are you irate are not here?
Well, Animal Person by Alexander MacLeod. I was positive. Okay, it's going to win a GG then. Governor General Award, because it's that good.
And it's short stories.
It's short stories. I can compare it to Raleigh Hodge and his Stray Dogs. There's a couple of stories in Animal Person that are more about, the strange out there kind of individuals. But even those stories, Alexander MacLeod makes you really care about them, or care about the people around them. That, there's something that gets to the heart. Right. And I didn't get that emotional connection with Raleigh Hodge's stories. And I'm disappointed, but I'm also really surprised. It's not on this list, but there's lots of good books. So
the Governor General's long list, when does it drop?
I don't know, but it's not yet. Not yet. And then the other one that I'm quite disappointed isn't on this list is Chelsea Bowell's collection of short stories. Yes. Buffalo is the New Buffalo. Yeah. Now, that one is more experimental. Yeah, it's very different. But there's lots of different stories that did make the list. Yeah. So, I'm surprised, because if you love that writer's craft combined with really interesting ideas, that's really the strength of this collection. Maybe slightly less on the character development point, but that's because that's not the point of the stories. They're all speculative fiction to some degree or another. Very different and very exciting. I like books that kind of spark something, you know? And that one definitely did. So for a long time, it was in my lead as the best book I've read so far out of all of these possibilities until Animal Person nudged it out. But so those two, I'm sorry.
Well, my mom has the Chelsea Vowel collection, and when she's finished with it, she's going to pass it on to me, so I'm looking forward to that. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Giller long list?
No, I'm just going to say I think the judges did a great job, and I don't think people will go wrong reading any of these. So I'm always happy to see Canadian fiction out there in the spotlight. I know that there's not a lot of people that follow the Giller, but for those of you who do...
Hi, Peg!
Yes!
Peg, the book prize addict, follows me.
Yeah, so I have a couple of co-shadow jurors that I'd like to shout out.
And we didn't actually say in this video, as we did in years past, that you're one of the shadow jurors of the Giller.
Yes, and so the one who's been on the team the longest is Penny. She's got a book blog, Literary Hoarders. And then our newest member, she's just joined us, is Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl.
Oh, how lovely.
Yes,
lovely.
Yes. And if you watch Jolene, then you know how much she loves Canadian literature. So it's great having her on board too. So what we're going to be doing is we'll be reading the short list and coming up with the book that we think will be the winner. So if We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies makes the short list, we'll see. You know, maybe that will be the winning title. But we have to wait until the short list is announced. In the meantime, I think we'll be reading as many of the long list as we can. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, maybe I'll join you next year.
Woo! That would be great.
And the last comment I have is Booker Schmooker.
Yes.
Thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.